Welcome. This is the fourth installment in our series of webcasts on how to draft better additional provisions in the Colorado Real Estate Commission approved contract. Our first one talked about the notion, first seek to avoid drafting an additional provision at all. The second one said, if you have to draft something, think about merely supplementing the existing pre-printed language. The third one said, make a decision about whether you're drafting something that is a contingency or whether it's an affirmative obligation. Is it a contingency, so if the contingency is not satisfied, generally the deal dies, or is it an affirmative obligation? So if one side can't perform, the non-performing side is in default under the contract. All right, once you've made that decision, then what do you do? Generally, it sounds corny, but you address the ABC of writing the additional provision. The A is what activity, what action, what needs to be accomplished. Notice all three of those words, activity, action, accomplished, all begin with an A. That's the A part of it. Okay, then you address by when must this happen. And then the C is the difference between a contingency and an affirmative obligation. The C is, what are the consequences? What are the consequences if the A doesn't happen by the B? So, with a contingency, if the action doesn't happen, the contract generally dies. The contract terminates in Real Estate Commission approved, Colorado Real Estate Commission approved language. If the action is that if the thing doesn't happen by the B, by the date by which it's supposed to happen, then the non-defaulting party, the party who's supposed to perform, is in default under the contract. John, this is too complicated. Give me an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. Going back to our last installment, let's say the notion is that the seller is supposed to hire a structural engineer to certify that the roof is sound. So the A is hire a licensed structural engineer to do what? To certify that the property is structurally sound and structurally sound. Let's leave it at that. That's the A. Okay, by when? That's easy. You pick a date. What happens if it's not satisfied? If it's not satisfied by a certain date and it's intended to be an affirmative obligation, then you go on to say, if this isn't satisfied, the seller will make whatever repairs, whatever improvements are necessary to make the property structurally sound. If it's intended as a contingency, then you say that if the engineer opines that the property is not structurally sound, then the contract terminates, or either buyer or seller may terminate it not later than such and such a date. That's the difference between an affirmative obligation and a contingency. Now, I don't want you to walk away from this four-part series to think that you are a pro now. You know, when I was in junior high school, I took a martial arts class, and after my first class, I thought I was ready to take on the powerhouse fighter of the era, Muhammad Ali. I was not, don't be cocky like me. All these things are designed to reduce the likelihood of error. They do not guarantee that the clause will be perfect. These are just tips to how to draft better additional provisions. It's not how to draft perfect additional provisions. But armed with the four notions in this four-part series, hopefully we'll all be a little bit better at it. In the meantime, remember, we live in a complicated world. Be careful out there.